Back at the house, they had dinner together, and Erin handed her receipts over to her uncle. He was reading over the receipts, curious about what she would get.
Oh, good. You needed new shoes. I'm glad you got a pair. You should have gotten more clothing.
I didn't really see a whole lot that interested me,
Erin replied. Jacob shook his head in exasperation.
At what point did you lose your ability to weave matter?
At Erin's startled look, he rolled his eyes playfully.
Just what do they teach you at that school? Susanna?
I've already added it to the mental list, Dad.
She replied.
So many lessons we need to catch you up on. It's a good thing that I bought a bunch of clothing in your size for you to practice on.
She grinned as she handed over her receipts to her father. Katie spoke up.
I thought matter magic didn't come easily to warlocks.
Just because it doesn't come easily to me doesn't mean that I can't teach it. I mean, I won't exactly, because I'm terrible at it. But I did learn from a necromancer, and as a necromancer, Erin will pick it up so fast. Did you want to stay for the lesson? How's your matter magic?
Actually, yeah, that would be great. I'm always up to learning new techniques.
After dinner, everyone headed out to the family room where there was plenty of seating. The adults stayed on the outskirts of the room where Jacob offered them some aged wine. He smirked a little as he watched the kids because the way Susanna was going to teach Erin and then Katie was nothing like what the schools taught.
Okay, Erin, I'm going to teach you the way Jeremiah taught me. I think as a necromancer, it will make a lot more sense to you than it did to me at first.
She pulled out a pair of tight acid-wash jeans. She could tell immediately that Erin hated them.
Did you have to find the worst pair of pants at the mall? I think they are even so high-waisted that they need 2 belts. Are you insane?
Erin asked in a mock, teasing tone. She knew Susanna had a reason for grabbing a pair of jeans she had jokingly made retching faces at when they were shopping.
Close your eyes,
Susanna demanded and waited for Erin to do so.
I want you to picture the jeans as they are now in your mind. And then I want you to transform them in your mind into jeans you would wear. That includes changing the waist, the color, the leg width, even the fabric if you don't like the feel of it. Everything you would want in a pair of pants. Do you have that mental image? Yeah.
Susanna took the leg of the jeans and put it into Erin's hand.
Feel the molecules of these jeans and change them to be what you imagine the jeans becoming. You don't like this piece of matter in your hands, so rearrange it into something you do like.
Everyone watched as the jeans' coloring changed from nearly white to a mid-blue. The waist shrank down and would sit a little lower than was standard on jeans. The legs widened a little so that they wouldn't be so skin-tight. The shape of the butt and crotch changed as well to give her butt a little extra room without overbalancing with more crotch space. She also changed the zipper fly to a button fly, and then finally gave the waist of the pants more belt loops, so that she didn't get those awful gaps along the back. When she was done, Erin opened her eyes and looked at her handiwork.
Holy shit.
Katie gasped. She had watched the actual magic that was woven and didn't understand how someone who didn't know how to do this a few seconds ago came up with that bit of spell work.
Now those look great,
Susanna exclaimed while Colby and Deacon grinned. Susanna pulled out the most heinous-looking sweater.
Now I'm going to link Katie up to your mind while you fix this sweater.
She turned to Katie.
I didn't understand how to do what Erin just did until our older cousin told me to watch his mind while he did the spell work. I'm going to link up you and Erin, and she will essentially teach you how to do what she just did. I can't explain it like her mind will. Are you both ready?
Erin nodded, and after a few moments, Katie did too. Erin closed her eyes and shortly after felt the presence of Katie's consciousness. Katie watched as Erin created the image of the sweater as it was, and then watched as she changed the knit to cotton, took the pink to black, and then added simple gray striping along the sleeves in wide blocks of color. She then changed the front into the cover art of Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon. Katie then felt that the sweater's arm had been put into Erin's hand. She then felt the matter within the sweater in a way she had never felt it before. It was almost too much, as she could feel the location of every atom and molecule of the sweater. She felt how Erin rearranged them to make the changes she wanted, and what's more, she understood the changes. She had never witnessed spellwork like this. She knew it would be much harder for her to do this magic because she simply didn't have the ability in matter magic just yet, but it was enough that she could understand it. And with practice, it was possible. When the connection released, Katie was still reeling with the new knowledge.
Your turn, Katie.
Susanna beamed.
There's no way. I don't have that kind of ability.
Katie protested.
For you and me, baby steps are better.
Susanna pulled out a t-shirt.
You lamented that this wasn't in red. I grabbed this pink one because it has enough red tones in it that you should be able to change the color. You seemed to like everything else about it.
Katie closed her eyes, and soon Susanna put a corner of the t-shirt into her hand.
Can you feel that muted red?
Katie nodded.
Do you remember how Erin changed the color?
She nodded again.
It's not so drastic. Just nudge it a little.
The color began to darken and shift.
There you go. Just like that. There. I think that's the shade you wanted.
Katie opened her eyes and looked at her handiwork.
It's perfect.
I knew you could do it.
Susanna grinned.
That was amazing. Why doesn't the school teach like that?
Katie asked.
Because it takes someone who really understands the subject. I told her to do it exactly as our highly skilled necromancer cousin told me. That's the way necromancers understand matter, but it's not the way the rest of us understand it. Erin is going to have a really hard time understanding spirit magic, but there's only so much this method will be able to teach her, even with my dad teaching her. For a necromancer, this level of magic is really basic, so seeing these basic magics from their perspective is possible to learn it. With very little coaching, Erin could change this entire house into a full medieval castle and every stick of furniture and fabric into period-specific pieces. She might even be able to do it as fast as she changed the clothing. You and me and Deacon, Colby, my dad, and your parents wouldn't be able to do it alone, and it would take days. But she could, and she could do it in a few hours tops. Conversely, I could remove this bracelet and get the thoughts of every person in a city. It would suck, but I could take it. The only other person in the room that could take that is your father. That is the difference between someone walking that particular path and someone who is just decently good in that particular magic. This you should know by now.
I did, but having it explained versus being shown it, so learning this way would only be good for basics and only from someone who follows that path of magic.
Correct. And let's be honest, seeing what a necromancer is capable of with little training is just so disheartening when you're back in your own mind with your own capabilities. I mean, it would be the same for Erin if I did that with a simple space magic spell. She'd get a little better understanding of the arcane, but she will never see space relationships like I can, or the relationships of fate like you or Colby can.
I don't think I see fate relationships like Colby can.
Katie admitted.
I've had a lot of practice and honed my abilities through working at the shop. Don't be discouraged.
Colby replied. He knew that his raw magical ranking was much higher than Katie's. No matter how much she trained, her raw talent was lower than his, due to him being among the magically gifted families. She would know that, and there was no need to rub it in and remind her of it. He could see she needed the encouragement right now, and it didn't lessen himself to give it.
Later, we can talk about super-secret enchanter abilities.
He winked playfully, knowing that she had been hoping to learn from him a little bit. It wasn't often that a more gifted family was willing to help out lower-standing mages. A lot of the other families were elitist, but their father had reminded them over and over again that their magic means nothing in the greater scheme of things. To look down on another, for any reason, was a good way to see his dark side because he refused to raise elitist brats. Their dad was interesting. He wanted to give them anything they wanted, but he didn't want them to just expect or demand everything. This is why Deacon worked as a physical therapist. He was so fit and powerful that working with those that had problems moving in ways that are seen as simple was to keep him humble too. Susanna loved shopping, so she also worked retail to keep her balanced. Colby liked to be lazy and have luck, and fate bring him everything, so the fact that he had to keep making products to sell forced him to face that vice. So many other parents from powerful and old family lines allowed their children to lean into their vices. In doing so, they became petty, mean, and lazy. There were several of those families at Katie's school. They were those cool but mean kids who always traveled in cliques. It was refreshing to Katie, as well as her parents, to see such a family be so down-to-earth and open. Katie and Colby talked about divination techniques while everyone else sat and chatted in small groups and waited for nightfall.
Hey everyone, hope you loved the video. Don't forget to give it a thumbs up and hit subscribe for more awesome sci-fi content. You can also support us by hitting the thanks button or becoming a channel member. Your generosity helps us bring you more stellar stories. Every bit counts. Thanks a bunch.